Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Space This Week, the weekly show where we talk about space news, wait for it, this week. This week has been a great one, actually. We've had launches, landings, failed launches, and failed landings. So all in all, lots to discuss. I see no reason to dwell on the intro any longer though, but before we proceed, I must request you hit subscribe down below, lest you miss an installment of Space This Week, or worse, only find the video in your feed 3 weeks late, rendering it useless, although hopefully still entertaining nonetheless. Guys, take your protein pills, put your helmets on, and enjoy the first segment, all the launches and spaceflight events that happened last week. The first rocket launch of the week was on February the 15th and was a successful Soyuz 2.1 launch, Progress MS-16, launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, which carried cargo to resupply the International Space Station. As well as resupply the space station, the mission has the secondary objective to deorbit the Russian PERCY module in order to make way for its replacement, the Nauka module, which will arrive later this year. PERCY has been a feature of the ISS for nearly 20 years, so it'll be very sad to see it go. But I guess you could say that that's just progress, eh? The Progress successfully docked with the PERCY module on the 17th of February, 2 days after launch. The next launch of the week was on February the 16th and was SpaceX's latest Starlink mission. And it was a success! The Falcon 9 booster successfully launched from Cape Canaveral, carrying 60 Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit, where they were successfully deployed. SpaceX also managed to successfully recover the active payload fairing half of the flight as well. However, in what is surprisingly a surprising result, they didn't manage to land the Falcon 9. We saw a shot of the drone ship in the live stream as if the booster were about to touch down as usual, but instead of the usual business, we instead saw this very brief orange glow in the sky, followed by darkness and nothing. SpaceX have not yet provided a statement about the fate of the booster, but Scott Manley has provided a great in-depth video into what happened. Check that out if you're interested in a deep dive using the on-screen card. This booster had a good life though. This was its 6th launch overall, which is a lot more than most first-stage rocket boosters can live through. Usually it's just one. Let us now look back over this booster's life in Space This Week's first In Memoriam segment. Wow, truly moving stuff. Moving on. The third and final launch of the week was on the 20th of February and was an Antares 230 Plus rocket that launched from the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport. The primary payload was a Cygnus NG-15 spacecraft named in honor of NASA mathematician Katherine Johnson, who played a critical role in human spaceflight missions from Freedom 7 to Apollo 11. Cygnus NG-15 is the 15th Northrop Grumman International Space Station resupply mission and is expected to reach the station today, February the 22nd, where it'll be berthed to the Unity module using Canadarm2. Also aboard the Antares rocket was a technology demonstration satellite on behalf of Khalifa University in the United Arab Emirates, 3 technology demonstration satellites operated by Japanese Kyushu Institute of Technology from Japan, Paraguay, and the Philippines, as well as 42 ThinSats as part of a STEM outreach program for grades 4 to 12 by the Virginia Commercial Spaceflight Authority. I hope we'll see this mission conclude as successfully as it began later today. Once its mission has been completed, the Cygnus resupply vessel will perform a safe, destructive re-entry into Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean. Lots of important stuff on board the rocket overall, with much of the payload dedicated to education in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Pretty tough subjects to study, unless, of course, you use Brilliant, the sponsor of today's video. Brilliant is a fantastic problem-solving online resource that has over 60 interactive learning courses in science, maths, and computer science. What I love about Brilliant is that they have a real knack in taking complex and intimidating topics and breaking them down into easily understood chunks. I'm guessing that if you're watching this video, then you probably find rocket launches interesting. Maybe you'd like to learn more about the physics behind these amazing vehicles, in which case Brilliant has an excellent course in classical mechanics, which provides a great hands-on learning experience on a wide range of concepts that rocket scientists work with every day, including angular kinematics, the rocket equation, and Einstein's theory of relativity, and every step of the way, the content is presented in a fun and engaging way. If all this sounds good to you, then click on my link, also on screen, brilliant.org/MattLowne, as using my link will not only let Brilliant know that you came from here, but also gets the first 200 people to use it 20% off their annual premium subscription. Brilliant elevates maths and science from something to be feared to a delightful experience of guided discovery, so don't forget to click that link below. And now that we've covered our sponsor, let's journey down to Boca Chica, Texas, to check in on SpaceX's Starship development. This is going to be quite a quick bit of coverage really, as due to the freezing weather and high winds that Texas is currently enduring, any chance of flight or static fire testing of the SN9 is a no-go. But Brendan Lewis has nonetheless once again been hard at work creating update infographics depicting the status of each Starship prototype. The very exciting take-home from this infographic this week is that the very first Super Heavy booster prototype, the BN1, looks to have all of its components completed, aside from its grid fins, and we should therefore hopefully see it assembled very soon. The SN15 is also progressing very well, which is exciting because it will feature the first major improvement since the SN8. The SN9, 10 and 11 only have minor upgrades over the SN8. Quite what the SN15's improvements are remains to be seen, but I have high hopes that it will mean that the SN15 will be the first fully successful flight and landing test of a Starship vehicle if the SN10 and 11 don't quite stick the landing. The future is exciting, ladies and gentlemen. And that's it. No more news from last week. I think I heard something about NASA doing something with a robot, but I don't know, who cares about that one, right? I joke, of course. I've saved the best news until last. Gotta get those viewer retention analytics up after all. Yes, on Thursday, February the 18th, NASA's latest Mars rover, Perseverance, successfully landed in the Deep Jezero crater located near the Martian equator. The touchdown was similar to 2012's Curiosity mission. An insanely cool sky crane system used retro rockets to slow down to landing speed before winching down the car-sized rover to the surface before flying away. We were treated to this amazing photo taken with the rover approximately 2 meters from the surface. Breathtaking stuff, and one benefit of having the sky crane is that the retro rockets can actually clear away quite a lot of dust and debris from the landing site, which is illustrated really well in this photo. Now, the rover's name, Perseverance, was chosen from a Name the Rover contest, which received a cool 28,000 essays. The winning essay was by Alex Mather, a high school student from Virginia, who wrote that we are a species of explorers, and we will meet many setbacks on the way to Mars. However, we can persevere. We, not as a nation, but as humans, will not give up. The first ever rover mission to Mars was in 1997. Sojourner was small, and his only purpose was to prove that we could in fact have a rover roam the red planet. Next up we had Spirit and Opportunity in 2004, who discovered evidence that the planet once hosted running water before becoming a frozen desert, and most recently, until last week I guess, we launched Curiosity in 2012, which landed in Gale Crater and discovered that many millennia ago the crater held a lake and an environment that could have supported microbial life. Curiosity is still studying the red planet to this day, and now he has a brother. Technically, two of them, as Perseverance, while certainly the biggest passenger, wasn't the only robot to touch down last week. The proof of concept Ingenuity helicopter also landed alongside the Perseverance. Ingenuity's goal is a simple one: attempt powered flight in the very thin atmosphere of Mars, something that has never been achieved before. The first flight is expected to take place soon, once it's confirmed that the helicopter survived the journey to Mars, and will be just a 20 to 30 second test, after which NASA will attempt to send it further to take aerial photographs of the surface. The photographs this little drone will take are not designed to directly support the Perseverance mission. Ingenuity is a project designed to further our technological abilities on Mars and prove whether or not autonomous powered flight is possible on Mars. But back to Perseverance, its new home, the Jezero crater, is believed by scientists to have once been an oasis, with evidence of flooding, rivers and lakes, and depositing segments packed with carbonate materials and clay. The science team believes that the former rivers have collected and preserved signs of microbial life, and it is signs of life that Perseverance is designed to detect. Yes, Perseverance's primary purpose is to determine if life ever existed on Mars, and it will study the surface of Mars and search for preserved signs of biosignatures in rock samples. It will also collect data about Mars's geology and climate to provide scientists a richer picture of the planet's history. Perseverance will pave the way for Mars manned missions as well. There are many ways in which it will do this, but the key technologies that the rover has at its disposal are the Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment, or MOXIE, and the Mars Environment Dynamics Analyzer, or MEDA. MOXIE is an experiment which will produce oxygen from Mars's carbon dioxide atmosphere. It's a proof of concept experiment, but will push us further forward in our manned mission challenge if it's successful. MEDA is an instrument suite which will provide information about the current weather, climate, and dust on the surface. Perseverance is the first Mars rover to search for signs that microbial life has existed at some point on Mars. Previous rovers were simply focused on confirming that Mars once had a habitable climate. Another new feature of this rover is the ability to core into rocks and remove samples, which can then be photographed to determine if the sample should be returned to Earth for home study. You heard me right there. This is another first for a Mars mission. A daring fetch rover is planned to launch in 2026 to retrieve samples. The fetch rover will collect the samples and bring them back to a rocket, which will then bring the samples into orbit, deposit them into a return vessel that'll then carry the samples back to Earth. This sample return mission is a joint venture between NASA and the European Space Agency, and it will allow us to study the samples for years to come. Overall, it goes without saying that this mission is one for the history books and will exponentially expand not only our knowledge of Mars, but also our hope for a manned mission in the future. I especially love all the little links to our much-loved Curiosity rover, who I'm sure is very happy to have some more friends on the planet. I'm sure this isn't the last time I'll be discussing Perseverance in space this week, but for now, I'm going to wrap up our coverage here. Hopefully next week we'll have some more news, hopefully on the success of the Ingenuity helicopter. For now, we'll move on to our next segment, all the launch events slated to happen next week. But before I roll that transition, guys, if you're enjoying this video so far, then please do leave a like down below. It helps me to feed my family. Anyway, I think we can all agree that the biggest news of this week is the very first installment of 56-second space summary. I've made a new YouTube channel called Lowne Shorts, where I upload 59-second or shorter videos summarizing my Kerbal Space Program missions and Space This Week. So if you want a summary of Space This Week that's only 56 seconds long, then why not tune into 56-second space summary over on Lowne Shorts. The first episode comes out today to coincide with today's episode of Space This Week. Okay, I'm now done plugging my own channel. Let's talk about launches now. The first launch of the week will be today, February the 22nd, and will be a Chinese Long March 4C launching from the Huiquan Satellite Launch Center. On board will be 3 Chinese Yaogan reconnaissance satellites, which will be placed into low Earth orbit. On February the 25th, we'll have SpaceX's next Starlink mission, which will place 60 more Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit. The Falcon 9 first stage will hopefully successfully land 633 kilometers downrange on the Just Read the Instructions drone ship, and fairing recovery ships Mistree and Mischief are expected to attempt fairing recovery as well. This will be the second time that SpaceX reuse a Falcon 9 first stage for the 8th time, and this mission will also be the 75th successful booster landing, provided of course that things don't go the way of the last Starlink mission. Next up, we have a video of a small cat. As I can't show you the footage of the rocket that'll be launching on the 28th of February without the Indian government giving me a copyright strike. Yes, we have an Indian PSLV-DL launch, which will launch from the Satish Dhawan Launch Complex. It will carry 20 Indian satellites of varying purpose, including observation, education, and technology demonstration, as well as the Amazonia 1, the very first Brazilian Earth observation satellite. Here's hoping the mission goes well. I, for one, cannot wait to not show you guys the launch video next week, given the copyright nonsense and all, but hopefully this cat is a satisfactory stand-in. Also, on the 28th of February, we have a rocket I can show you. It'll be another Soyuz 2.1, launching once again from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, carrying a Russian Arktika M satellite, which will be placed into a Molniya orbit. A Molniya orbit is a satellite orbit designed to provide communications and remote sensing coverage over high latitudes, and is highly elliptical in nature with an inclination of 63.4 degrees, an augment of perigee of 270 degrees, and an orbital period, i.e. orbital duration, of approximately half a sidereal day. The name Molniya is derived from the Molniya satellites, a series of Soviet civilian and military communication satellites that have used this type of orbit since the mid-1960s. Here's to the hopeful success of this latest Soyuz launch. Now, there are no other planned orbital launches next week, but we do have a suborbital flight. It'll be a routine US Air Force test of a Minuteman III missile launching from the Vandenberg Air Force Base. These sorts of tests are fairly common and aren't signs of conflicts arising, don't worry, but it is the final launch of the week, unless SpaceX surprises with an SN10 high-altitude flight, of course, which brings an end to this segment of Space This Week. Let us then roll the transition to our final segment, all the best historic anniversaries set to take place over the next 7 days. Our first historic anniversary is tomorrow, February the 23rd, when, in 1987, the creatively named supernova 1987A is seen in the Large Magellanic Cloud. This was the closest observed supernova to Earth since Kepler's supernova, discovered in 1604, and was the first supernova that modern astronomers could observe, burning with the power of 100 million suns for several months following its discovery. It remains the nearest supernova explosion observed in hundreds of years, and provided the best opportunity yet for astronomers to witness the phases preceding, during, and after the death of a star. Given the size of the original star, the supernova should have resulted in a neutron star, which is the collapsed core of a former supergiant star. The Hubble Space Telescope took frequent images of the supernova from 1990 without clear identification of a neutron star, but then, in 2019, evidence was found of a neutron star inside one of the brightest clumps of dust after years of searching. Our next anniversary is a biggie, and it's the first ever flight of the Saturn V's little brother, the Saturn 1B. This was the unmanned launch of AS-201, which took place on February the 26th, 1966. The Saturn 1B was the upgraded version of the Saturn 1, which had flown 10 earlier Apollo missions. The thrust of the first stage engines was increased from 6,700 kilonewtons to 7,100 kilonewtons, and a new upper stage that used the new liquid hydrogen burning J2 engine, which would also be used on the second and third stages of the Saturn V, was added. The objectives of this particular mission were to demonstrate the Saturn 1B's propulsion, guidance, and electrical systems, and ensure that all systems worked as expected. It would also test the Apollo Command Module's ablative heat shield and the support facilities for launch, mission control, and recovery. The Saturn 1B first stage worked well, as did the second stage, which lifted the command module to 425 kilometers. The command module then separated and continued upwards to 488 kilometers. It then performed two burns, one for 184 seconds, and then fired again for a further 10 seconds, proving that the engine could restart in space, a critical component for any crewed flight to the moon. The command module entered the atmosphere at 8.3 kilometers per second and splashed down 37 minutes after launch. Overall, the mission encountered only 3 problems. The main issue was the service module's engine only worked correctly for 80 seconds, after which helium entered the combustion chamber. Helium is normally used to pressurize the fuel tanks and really shouldn't enter the combustion chamber. The issue was caused by a break in an oxidizer line that allowed helium to mix with the oxidizer. The only other problems were associated with some bad wiring in the command module, and these were easily fixed. The third and final anniversary of the week will take place on February the 28th, which marks the 1959 launch of Discoverer 1, an American test spy satellite that was the first object launched with intent to achieve polar orbit. The launch was a success initially, but unfortunately the satellite failed to reach orbit. Luckily, this was just a test vessel and didn't contain any actual camera or lens, but I still thought it was an interesting moment in history nonetheless. A CIA report, later declassified, concluded that today, most people believe the Discoverer 1 landed somewhere near the South Pole. Now, Discoverer 1 is the last anniversary I wanted to discuss in our history segment this week, so let's move along to our closing thoughts section. Yes, that concludes another episode of Space This Week. I know, fairly empty this week in terms of historic anniversaries, but hey, with the success of Perseverance's landing, we should have a good anniversary to discuss in future years of Space This Week. And if you'd like to add to the list of historic achievements, but currently lack the knowledge to pull off such feats, then why not sign up to Brilliant? Using my link below, brilliant.org/MattLowne, maybe you'll learn a thing or two about rocket science. Remember, signing up via the link gives a discount for the first 200 people to use it, and signing up via the link also lets Brilliant know where you came from. If you'd like to watch more episodes of Space This Week, then there's now a link on screen to the full Space This Week playlist, as well as a video on the right that was selected for you by YouTube's AI. Hopefully it's a good choice. You can also see there's a link to subscribe and check out Patreon if you'd like to support my channel in either of those ways, and in the description you can find links to social media, merchandise, Discord, all that good stuff. Guys, thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you on Saturday for the next Kerbal adventure.